Code on wages replaces 4 acts. What are the 4 acts? Are Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Wages Act, Equal Remuneration Act, and Payment of Bonus Act. So all these 4 acts have been replaced, and now we have one consolidated one code on wages. So what were these acts? Basically, in short, Minimum Wages Act was for provision of minimum wages to the workers in scheduled employments. So government was fixing minimum rates of wages to all these employees in scheduled employment. Then we come to Payment of Bonus Act. What was the purpose of Payment of Bonus Act? That it whatever profits are there, any establishment gets, so that has to be shared with the employees. So it it provided for minimum bonus, maximum bonus, all these provisions were there, but it was applicable only to certain factories and industrial establishments. Now this code on wages is made applicable universally. Now so far as Equal Remuneration Act was there, it was only for purpose of gender discrimination. So there words used were man and woman basically. So there should not be any discrimination in respect of recruitment and in respect of conditions of service. So that was the purpose. Now, and then Payment of Wages Act. Payment of Wages Act was for purpose of mode of payment of wages, time of payment of wages, and then it provided for authorized deductions, what could be made. So all these 4 acts have now been replaced, and now there is only one code on wages. So we now start with the discussion. We will go chapter wise. First chapter of the code on wages is important. It deals with the definitions. So we go with the first definition. The first before definitions. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Hello.
Because of the network.
Hello. Yeah, I'm not able. Hello. Hello.
Your audio, I think, has some. We are unable to hear you. I think there is a network issue.
Ricardo.
I don't think so, because we all can hear Sujit Salkar, sir. There is no problem with your voice.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah.
You are
Okay,
loud and clear.
So I can go ahead. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay.
So we can hear you. Please continue, sir.
Okay. So first we come to the applicability. Now coming to applicability of the act, it applies to all the establishments. Now earlier acts, Payment of Wages Act, Equal Remuneration Act, and all these acts, they were applied to only certain establishments. So Minimum Wages Act was applicable only to scheduled employments. Payment of Bonus Act was applicable only to factories and industrial establishments. Even Payment of Wages Act was applicable to certain establishments. Now this entire code on wages is applicable to all the trade establishments, any place where business is carried on. So its establishment's definition is made very wide. So applicability is also made very wide. Now coming to definition, first definition we will be examining will be accounting year. Now so far as accounting year, this is has relation with the payment of bonus. Now what they have made it simply that accounting year will be from 1st April to it will be from 1st April the accounting year will start. So it will be 1st April to 31st March. So payment of bonus for any year now, accounting year will be 1st April to 31st March. Earlier, the provisions were at the choice of the employers. The accounting year could be fixed. Now, such provision is not there. Only one accounting year is there for entire establishments, all the establishments throughout the country. In certain multinational companies, the accounting year starts from 1st January. So now that they have to change that accounting year, and accounting year will be from 1st April for any purpose of the bonus act, for purpose of this payment of bonus under this code. Then come to next definition is appropriate government. Now appropriate government definition here slightly they have changed. Only they have added. So appropriate government is for deciding what rules should be there. There are appropriate government is central government in certain cases, and in certain cases it is state government. Now in establishments which are carried on by or under the authority of the central government, or for corporations and companies where shareholding of the government is there, or it is established by the central government, in such cases the appropriate government will be central government. In any other cases it will be state government. Now only change they have brought in is that so far as contract labor is concerned, in that case, if the contract labor is engaged, is providing his services in the central government establishment, for example BPCL or HPCL or MTNL, all these are government establishments. So if they are providing services over there, then in that case the appropriate government will be central government. Then we come to important definition is of contractor. Now contractor, as you all know, is there are two types of contractors: one who supplies contract labor, and another is who undertakes to produce work. For example, a security guard provider, he merely supplies the contract labor, so he is forms in the first part of category of the contractor. So far as a canteen contractor, he gives an undertaking to give a result. So not only supplies, but he also gives some product or services. So entire package is there. So this kind of contractor forms in the second part of the definition. Now then we come to definition of contract labor. Now contract labor, the change which they have brought in this is that an interstate migrant worker is also included in definition of contract labor, and they have excluded a person who is regularly employed except a part-time employee. If a person is regularly employed by a contractor, and if there is service conditions are by an agreement, or all social security benefits are given to that employee by the contractor, and if he is regular permanent employee, then in that case he will be excluded from the definition of contract labor. The most important definition is of the employee. Here they have made a very significant change. Now what the employee, now they have added managerial employees, administrative employees, as well as supervisory employees in the definition of employee. So this is a very vital change they have made. Earlier, mostly all these enactments were applicable to workman category. Now they have made this applicable to even a managerial category employee. So this later part we will discuss. This managerial employee will also benefit, because earlier there are no forums for managerial employee for claiming wages. If unpaid wages are there, then they had no forum. But now, by virtue of this change in the definition, they can also now claim any unpaid wages under the section 45 by filing an application. So this is what most important change. And then thereafter, definition of the employer. The employer, what they have done is they have specifically mentioned about contractor. So employer is a person who directly or through any other person engages an employee. So if he directly employs, then he is an employer, or through a contractor, if he is engaging, still he is an employer. And they have also mentioned a contractor as an employer. So both will be liable. So they can't dispute that no, he is not my employee, he is the employee of the contractor. Both are the employer. Then in case of factory, it will be occupier or the manager, or in any other establishment, it will be a person who has ultimate control over the affairs of the establishment. He will be the employer. And if in case of deceased employer, it will be a legal representative. So then very important definition is the establishment. Establishment, now they have made it very, very wide. Establishment means any place where industry, trade, business, manufacture or occupation is carried on. And most important, they have included government establishment also. So this code will apply even to government establishments where they are carrying on business. If a government establishment is carrying on business, industry or trade, they will also be covered. And all establishments, they have not made it, even unorganized sector will be covered under this code. Employees engaging 5 employees, 2 employees, 3 employees, there are so many employers, and these employees were not getting benefits of labor law legislations. So now these employees who are not in organized sector, they will also get benefit of the code. Then we come to definition of wages. This is also a very important change they have made, significant change. Now what they have done is wages includes all the allowances, basic allowance, dearness allowance, and all allowances will be included in the wages. This they have made with the intention that certain employers, then there was always a dispute whether this allowance is part of wages or not. Medical allowance, traveling allowance, so many allowances were being paid. So now all the allowances will be inclusion in the inclusion part of the wages. So whatever wage structure is fixed, still this it will be covered. If the allowances are paid, all will be covered. All allowances will be covered in the inclusion part of the wages. Now what they have excluded is only bonus payable to the employees, which is statutorily paid bonus. Now only statutory bonus paid. Suppose if it is a in work incentive bonus on basis of the work, on the basis of the contract, so that will not be included that will not be in exclusion part, it will be in the inclusion part. Then value of house accommodation and any other facilities as prescribed by the government. Then traveling allowance, then employers contribution to pension fund, etc. Then any remuneration paid as per the award or settlement, or any special expenses or by virtue of the employment if they have made. So all this will be excluded. Now most important thing they have done is that they have provided that now certain employers, they give less amount of basic and DA, because all this basic and DA is the base for calculation of indirect benefits. So most of the employers, they do basic and DA, they give very less, and exclusionary part is given more. So to suppress this mischief, what the government has done is that if the exclusion part is more than 50%, then it will be the excess, then excess of more than 50% will be included in the inclusion part. For example, suppose a basic DA and all allowances put together, it is 30%. And if you see the exclusion part, HRA, overtime, etc., all this traveling allowance and etc., all this is in 70%. So this extra 20% will be calculated in the first part. So it will be 50%. So wages will be 50%. So this they have done with the intention that everybody gets a same wages. So even if you terminology is there with this allowance, that allowance, now it doesn't affect, because this definition of wages is also is similar in other codes also, social security code and other codes which they have passed. In that code also this definition is there. So this is a very important change they have made. Then next we come to before we go ahead, in this definition itself, the definition of wages, in definition of wages, one more thing I'll add, that so far as payment which is made in kind, so that will also be 15% will be include in the inclusion part. And so far as gender discrimination is concerned, in that case, or exclusions in the form of HRA, commission, overtime, all this will be in the also be considered for determining the equality of wages. Now, now we come to section 3 and 4. These are basically on equal remuneration amongst the genders. So 3 and 4 basically what it provides is that there should not be discrimination in payment of wages between the genders. In matters of recruitment also, in matters of condition of service, the equal wages should be given, both of any gender if it is. Earlier it was man and woman, but now they have made it as a gender specifics. So gender word they have used. So the wide terminology. So if of any gender, if any person is there, he will not be discriminated, and his wages shall not be reduced. Suppose if person is getting, man is getting 15,000 and woman is getting 10,000. So it will not be reduced. At 15,000, it will not be reduced to 10,000 to make it equal. It will be other way. It will be enhanced to 15,000. Suppose a person is getting 10,000, he will be getting 15,000. Then we come to minimum wages chapter. So section 5 provides that no employer shall pay to any employee wages less than the minimum rates of wages. So all the employer is obliged to pay minimum wages. If he cannot afford to pay minimum wages, then he has to close down the establishment. That is what Supreme Court had said in one of the judgments. So here also they have maintained that position that all the employers have to pay minimum wages. Now minimum wages will be fixed on the basis of time rate or it piece rate, as its powers are given to the government. It can on basis of it can fix it hourly, daily, monthly, or basically this minimum wages will be fixed on the basis of the geographies or on the basis of the skills of the workers. For example, skilled worker, semi-skilled worker, unskilled worker, or it will be based on geographies, both or in both. For example, now they have fixed it as metro area, this will be the wages, non-metro areas, this will be the wages, in rural area, this will be the wages. And correspondingly, on basis of the skills of the workers also, it will be paid. So this will be determined both on basis of geography as well as skills. All these minimum wages will be fixed based on the recommendation of the committee. There will be committee comprised for fixing and revising the wages. And also the inputs of Central Advisory Board also will be taken into consideration. So they may have powers to fix wages as a one basic rate or dearness allowance or a consolidated which includes both basic as well as dearness allowance. Earlier it was basic plus dearness allowance, and this dearness allowance was always revised every 6 months, and basic was revised every 5 years. The fixation of minimum wages and all these provisions, all other provisions are same. Only the significant change they have made is in the section 9. They have introduced a concept of floor wage. Now what is a floor wage? Floor wage is a minimum wage fixed by the central government. It will be minimum wage, and every other state governments have to fix minimum wages more than this floor wage. For example, 10,000 or 12,000 is fixed as suppose take the 12,000 is fixed as minimum wage by central government as a floor wage. Then the all other governments, state governments have to give minimum wages more than 12,000. They can fix it 13,000, 15,000, 14,000, but it will be more than 12,000. So this is a significant change they have brought. Otherwise, all other provisions of the minimum wages are similar. And if already a minimum wage is fixed, which is higher than this floor wage, then they will not reduce. Suppose if already a per state is paying 15,000 and if floor wage is 10,000, then that it cannot be reduced by the appropriate government to make it 12,000, etc. Rest of the provisions of minimum wages, like fixing of what will be the number of hours, then there should be what will be the rest day, and there is provision for payment of overtime on if the person works on the rest day. All these provisions are similar as to the earlier provisions. Suppose an employee works for only a certain part of a day, and if he is not able to work for full day, then still he will be entitled to full day wages. Only in cases where it is due to his failure to work, or if he has on his omission, then only he will not get full wages for that period. Then we come to, and every employee will be entitled to overtime wages if he works than the normal working hours. So the normal working hours will be fixed by the government. And if normal working hours are suppose 8 hours, and if a person works more than that, then he will be entitled to overtime wages. Now we come to definitions under the we'll come to chapter 3. This is Payment of Wages Act. Now Payment of Wages Act, they have made a significant change in by bringing that the wages can be paid by check or by electronic mode, or directly crediting into the bank account of the employee. And in certain cases the powers are rested with the government, that in certain establishment it will be paid by check only or by crediting in the bank account, no cash payment. So all the wages will be paid by only check or by crediting in the bank account. So this will all help the employees, and there will not be any. So some certain employers, they used to pay in cash, and there was always a possibility that amount is paid less than the minimum wages, and it is recorded that minimum wages are paid. So all these practices can be avoided now. Everything can be paid by check, so that employees do not lose. Then this payment of wages chapter, it fixes the time limit for the payment of wages for employees who are engaged on daily basis. For employees who are engaged on daily basis, they will get the payment of wages at the end of the day. If it is a weekly basis, at the end of the week. If he is engaged fortnightly, then at the before the end of the 17th day, that is after the 2 days, before the expiry of the 2 days from the 15th, they have to pay wages. Then in case of monthly, before the 7th day of the succeeding month, we have to pay the wages. So for example, for a month of October, if wages are to be paid, though before 7th November, the wages are to be paid. And wage period cannot be more than 1 month. So it can be daily, weekly, but it should be not more than 1 month. Then we come to most important changes now they have made is that suppose an employee is removed or dismissed, or he has been retrenched, or he resigns from the services, then or there is closure of the establishment, then his wages should be paid within 2 working days. So earlier, this on termination or resignation, the wages were paid as per the there was no time limit, so it was left to the employer. But now every employer has to pay within 2 working days his wages. The full and final settlement is different. All other statutory dues, for example gratuity, PF, they will be paid as per the law under the PF Act and Gratuity Act. But so far as wages are concerned, it has to be paid within 2 working days only. Then we come to deductions. Now important so far as deductions are concerned, they are similar to what earlier Act provided under Payment of Wages Act. So deductions can be made only on account of fines or authorized deductions which are provided under the Act. For example, loan is taken, then there can be deduction. If contributions are to be paid for EPF or ESIC or any other statutory dues, income tax, etc. So that purpose, deductions can be made. In cases of trade union deductions, then authorization of that employee is required. So all this, what was provided earlier in the earlier Act, similar provision is there. Only change they have made is that deductions cannot exceed more than 50%. So if an employee is drawing salary of 60,000, his deductions will be, authorized deductions will be only 30,000. So if bank amount, if he has taken bigger loan, still he deduction can be only up to 30,000. So he has to take some salary at home. So these deductions will not exceed more than 50%. Then provisions regarding fines are also similar to what was earlier under earlier act. Now fines can be imposed for any act or omission by an employee, which is fixed by the approval of the government or by the authority of the government. A notice will be fixed on the place of the employment. Then before imposing fine, he will be heard, show cause notice will be given, and this fine will not exceed more than 3% of the wages payable to that person. And this fine will be imposed only for maximum period up to 90 days. After 90 days, there cannot be any further fine. Then the rest of provisions regarding deductions on absence from duty, deductions for recovery of loans remain same. Even deductions for loss for damages will be to the extent of the damage caused to the employer. And deductions for recovery of advances, etc. Then we come to payment of bonus. Now here there is not significant change. The payment of bonus, they have section 26(1). It provides that 8.33% of the wages earned shall be minimum bonus shall be paid to every employee. Even if there is losses, still this 8.33, that is minimum bonus, will be paid to every employee. Now this employee includes a managerial employee also. Now this minimum bonus will be for eligibility, and for what will be the eligibility for this, and for what will be the method of calculation of this bonus will be prescribed by the government. Or it may be it will be calculated on minimum wages, whichever is higher. So government will fix a wage, for example 7,000, 10,000. Now it is 7,000. On that 7,000 or minimum wages, whichever is higher, bonus can be calculated. But now they will fix, under this code, they will fix the salaries. It may be 7,000, 10,000, 8,000, whatever, or minimum wages, whichever is higher. Based on that, calculation of minimum bonus has to be made. And government will also fix the eligibility criteria for bonus. So this chapter of bonus is applicable only to establishments engaging 20 or more employees. So this exception remains there. Otherwise, the chapter on minimum wages and payment of bonus is applicable irrespective of any wage ceiling and irrespective of any number of employees engaged by an establishment. But so far as bonus is concerned, that eligibility is for that is that establishment should engage more than 20 employees. So rest of thing, that is calculation of, then maximum bonus will be 20%. That provisions remain same. Productivity bonus, that will also be all put together, should not exceed 20%. And even if you have any customary bonus is paid, or any bonus is paid in advance, that also will be adjusted against the final bonus declared by the employer. A person will be disqualified for the bonus if he has dismissed from the service for fraud, or for any riotous behavior, or for theft, misappropriation, or now they have included one more disqualification, that is if he is convicted for sexual harassment. So this additional disqualification they have introduced in this code. Rest of the things remain same. So far as branches are concerned, if all the branches will also be part of one establishment, unless that branches or undertakings they have their own separate balance sheets. So this all bonus amount has to be paid by crediting into the bank account of the employee within a period of 8 months from the close of accounting year. So for the suppose of 31st March, if the accounting year ends, then by November the bonus has to be paid. Then we come to chapter 5. It is an advisory board, constitution of advisory board. It will be advisory board will consist of both employers representatives, employees representatives. Then there will be independent persons also will be there. We shall not be more than 1/3 persons. Then nominees of the state governments, representatives of state governments. All this central, this will be constitution of a central advisory board. It will be function of the board to fix the minimum wages, revise the minimum wages, then to provide opportunities, how they can provide schemes for increasing employment for women, etc. So all these objects of the board. Similarly, state advisory boards will also be there for fixing minimum wages, etc. Now we come to chapter 6. Now this is a very important chapter. It is regarding recovery of the claims. Now every employer has to pay amounts payable under the code. So what are the amounts? Is the wages, minimum bonus, etc., overtime, etc. So if employee is not paid his wages, he can recover from that employer. It is duty of the employer to pay wages as agreed or as per the statute, that is minimum wages. Now, if an amount is to be paid to an employee after his death, that is wages are to be paid, and if he dies and his nominee is there, it will be paid to his nominee, and in case if there is no nomination, then in that case it will be deposited with the authority. Once the employer deposits with the authority, his liability is over. He is discharged from the liability. Now, for purpose of all the disputes arising under the code for recovery, an officer will be appointed by the government to decide the claims arising under the code. And powers are given to this authority to determine the claim, and in addition to the claim, a compensation of more than 10 times, up to the 10 times of the claim determined, he can award that also. So for example, if wages are 10,000, then claim for 10,000 is there, then the authority will pay him 10,000. In addition to that, 10 times compensation can also be paid. So these are the powers of the authority. And this claim has to be decided within 3 months. And if it is not paid, then a recovery certificate will be issued, and the same will be recovered as a land revenue. Now, what most important significant change they have made is an application for recovery can be made by an employee, by a trade union, or by an inspector cum facilitator. So application can now also be made by a trade union. This is a significant change. So if an employee is a member of any trade union, so trade union on behalf of the employee also can file an application. And this filing of application, the limitation period is 3 years from the cause of action. And in the cases of certain group of employees, a single application also can be made as per the rules prescribed, forms prescribed. Okay. So the authority appointed under this code will have the same powers as the civil courts for purpose of evidence and for production of documents, etc. Now, so far as disputes regarding bonus are concerned, that will be decided as an industrial dispute. Minimum bonus can be claimed under the section 45, but if maximum bonus is to be claimed, eligibility of bonus is there, then fixation of bonus, all these disputes will be decided by a tribunal as if it is an industrial dispute. Now, purpose of in this case, even employees are managerial employees are also, for them also, the in respect of bonus, it will be an industrial dispute. So if any person is aggrieved by the orders passed by the authority under section 45, an appeal can be filed within 90 days. And if there is delay, then there is a powers given to the authority to condone the delay. This appeal also has to be disposed of within the period of 3 months. Now coming to more provisions of regarding records, maintenance, etc. Every employer has to maintain a records and registers as prescribed under the Act. And records will be regarding muster roll, wages, and all details will be as whatever prescribed under the Act. And every employer has to display on the notice board what is the abstract of the Act, then the wage rate, wage period, date and time of payment of wages, etc. And most important thing is all employers are bound to give wage slips to employees as is prescribed under the Act. So even for small employers now, unorganized sector also, the employees have to be given wage slips by the employers. And if these records are not maintained or all these slips are not paid, all this will be an offense. However, these provisions regarding record maintenance will not employ to employers who are not engaging more than 5 persons for agriculture or domestic purpose. Suppose a employer engaging for any agriculture persons more than 5 persons, then in that case, less than 5%, in that case, this provisions of recording, maintaining will not apply. Now we come to the important chapter, is chapter 7, inspector cum facilitator. Now this earlier there were inspector under the 4 acts. So there were 4 inspectors under the 4 acts. Now there will be only 1 inspector cum facilitator. So employers' time, energy is not wasted. They have to deal with only 1 inspector cum facilitator. Now this inspector cum facilitator will be for one particular geography, for example Mumbai, Thane, Pune, etc. Or it may be for irrespective of geographical limits. So a person can go into any area and inspect. And there is provision for web-based inspection also. So this will electronic-based inspection also will be provided for. And most important thing is the inspector cum facilitator, as the name suggests, he will not only be a enforcing authority, he will at same time facilitate the execution of the code. He will advise the employers and all the workers for compliance of the provisions. He will give opportunity first to comply with the code, and if not, then only then he he can file a complaint. So his powers are to inspect the premises, he can examine the records, examine persons, he can search and seize the records. All these powers are given to the inspectors. Now we come to chapter 8. This is also very significant changes they have made in respect of offenses. Now this offenses complaint earlier only inspector could file. Now they have given even authority to employees as well as registered trade union to file a criminal complaint against an employer if he violates the code. So if there is violation of any code, then the employee can straight away file a criminal complaint. So earlier there was no provision for employee being able to file. Only government, that is inspector cum facilitated, could file complaints. Now this, in addition to inspector cum facilitated, registered trade union as well as an employee can file a complaint, criminal complaint. So employers have to now be vigilant on the compliance of the code on wages. So if there is some violation, then they will invite criminal prosecution. And this criminal complaint will be decided by Metropolitan Magistrate and JMFC. Irrespective of this provision for filing criminal complaint, the government can appoint an officer to decide for holding an inquiry and to decide whether there is violation of code, and all this officer also will have powers to impose penalty if after holding an inquiry it is found that there is violation of the code. Now we come to what are the offenses, what are the penalties. Now suppose if there is a less payment, employees are paid less than the amount due, then in that case it will be a 50,000 penalty for first time offense. Suppose that same offense is repeated within a period of 5 years, then in that case it will be twice the fine, that is 1 lakh rupees fine, and there will be imprisonment also. So first time offense only fine, second time offense it is imprisonment as well as fine will be double. Similarly, if there is any violation of the provisions of code, for example, we had read that section 50, that is maintenance of records, etc., etc. So if there is violation of any code or rule, then in that case, the amount of fine is 20,000. And if it is repeated again, then it will be 40,000 plus 1 month imprisonment. And similarly, in case of non-maintenance of records, it will be 10,000 rupees. So for these offenses which are of only in nature of fine, in that case, first opportunity will be given, and if opportunity is given, directions will be given to comply with that, and if it is not done, then a criminal case can be filed. Now, so far as offenses where punishment is of imprisonment, in that case, there will be no composition, there will be no compounding of offense. So, compounding of offense is provided under section 56 only in cases where there is a fine. So, in case of first time offense, you can compound the offense. So, if for first time there is a violation of any code, then provision is made that you can compound the offense, and appropriate forms and applications have to be made as prescribed under the code. So these provisions regarding penalties are very important changes they have made. One is that complaint can be filed by union. Second, first time offense is made only with respect to only fine, and then there is composition of offenses also is there. So far as that is concerned, there is a relief to the employers. But since employees can also file complaints, so and unions also are in the picture, so employers have to be on guard. Then any contract or which relinquishes the right of an employee under this code will be a null and void contract. So if any contract is made contrary to the provisions made in this code will be void ab initio. Similarly, section 61 is very important, that all the provisions of this code will have effect irrespective of whatever is provided under any other law. So this code will have primacy compared to all other acts. And burden is on the employer, put on the employer to prove that he has paid wages or he has complied with this code. Burden of proof will be on the employer to show that he has paid correct wages or correct remuneration as required under the code. And then we come to repeal provision. Repeal provisions, all the 4 acts, once the code comes into force, all the 4 acts will get repealed. Only saving provisions are that any action done under those acts will be saved. So in sum and substance, the code on wages provides reliefs both to the employers as well as employees, and it enlarges the scope of the payment of wages to all categories of employees, all establishments. So its applicability is widened, definition of establishment is widened. Then so far as punishment is concerned, it is also opportunity is given to employer to comply. Similarly, provision is made for recovery of the wages. So all together, this is benefit both the employers as well as employees. So this is what I want to submit in this session. I now hand over this session to Mr. Mane or anybody from LexGenius.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Sumit. It was really very great session which you have given. We do have some questions also through some of the participants. So we have these questions in our message box also, that is the chat option. But I will request Ms. Meena to please unmute herself and directly ask the questions, because there are lots of questions has come down from her end.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to let me ask these questions. My question was about a workday, the changes about what exactly constitutes workday under the Minimum Wages Act. Is there any change in that?
No, there is no change. Workday remains same.
8 hours or 9 hours?
8 hours. 8 hours.
8 hours, and the interval is included in that, right? So suppose yeah. So if I have a half an hour lunch break and 2 15-minute sessions of tea break.
No, that will be excluded. Intervals are excluded.
Intervals are excluded. So I have 8 hours of workday, half an hour plus half an hour of lunch and plus 2 15-minute session of tea. All together will be my workday.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And my next question was about the bonus act actually. What is a new establishment? Right now, what we had explained is that if there are multiple branches, Only if a branch is maintaining their own balance sheet, can it be considered a separate unit? Otherwise, at a corporate level, bonus has to be paid. Now, suppose there's a new establishment. I have 6 establishments which have already been established. A new establishment has come up. So, will the employees of that establishment also be, or rather, can that establishment claim the provisions of special establishment under the Act, the benefit of special establishments?
Yeah, they can claim. But in cases where profits are made, those year they will be entitled to the bonus. Initial 5 years.
So they can take benefit of that provision.
Yeah. Same provisions. Same provisions
apply to them also.
Yeah, same provisions.
Okay. There was also a reference to about an appellate authority, that appeal can be filed from an order. Appellate authority.
Appellate authority, they will prescribe it. It will be labor commissioner or some other authority.
Okay, that will be prescribed when comes up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meena. Thank you very much for that. Anybody else who has the questions, we can take one more question.
Hello, Manes sir. Hi, this is Sandeep Rana from Times Network.
Yes,
I had a question. First of all, thank you for this web session, and it was quite interesting, and it also shared many points which we were not clear about. So thank you, Sujit sir, for conducting this session. So I had a couple of queries. Please excuse me if they are very basic queries, but I'm just trying to understand from because I work with a media company. And we have working journalists in our media company now. The definition of workers under the wage code, it includes working journalists, and so I wanted to understand, even like a working journalist who, let's say, for example, is earning 50,000 per month in a media company, will because now the definition of establishment is also very wide. It includes every establishment where business is conducted. So will someone like for example, me who is working as a working journalist in a media company earning 50,000 per month would also be covered under the wage code?
Yeah, covered under wage code.
Okay. That was my first query. And
only bonus, if bonus chapter will be applicable to 20 or more establishments. And the bonus for entitlement of bonus, government will fix eligibility criteria.
Okay, sir.
Rest of things apply.
So even the wages.
Suppose wages are not paid.
Okay.
Then that working journalist or any person, any manager, any administrative person, he can straight away file an application. See, my earned wages are not paid, which forum was not available for managers earlier. They had to go under civil law, that is contract.
Yes.
So that was a very cumbersome, and it was really impossible for employees in managerial cadre to go to the civil code and file a case and then get a
yes.
Now this is made very simple. Employees definition is very clear. There is no confusion. So even working journalists as well as all managerial employees.
So for example, if someone is someone's service, because nowadays, because of the COVID situation and all, let's say someone's service is employment is terminated, and his dues are not paid, as you said, within 2 working days. So can he has a right to make a claim?
He can make a claim.
Okay.
Yeah, the dues means what? Only wages, huh?
Only wages, yes.
Only wages. So
not bonus.
Rest of things, for example, PF and etc., that will be paid as per that.
Yes. Government dues are, government benefits are excluded. Yes, I understand that. And sir, wages definition, the way it is defined, would it mean that 50% of your wages have to be your 2 components, that is your basic and your allowances?
Yeah, correct.
So it has to be 50%, and
Yes,
okay,
50%.
okay.
They have made inbuilt provision, though whatever you do, any employer does, it makes it any allowances and many exclusions are made. Still,
Okay.
it will come 50%, or
Okay, sir. Okay.
any other percentage which will be fixed by the government. At this stage, it is 50%. The
Okay.
government, if they want to revise it, they make it 70%.
Okay, sir. Okay. Okay, sir.
Inclusion
Thank you
part.
so much.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. That was really enlightening. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep. I will request Satish Kulkarkar to ask a question now. We can take only one question, yeah? Satish, are you able to hear us? Satish?
Hello.
Yeah.
I will request all the participants right now to raise the queries or any questions if they have.
Hello. Yeah, this is
Because due to time limitations, it is very difficult for us to manage all these questions and accommodate them. All right. So I'm just going ahead with the conclusion of this this webinar. Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Advocate Sujit Salkar, that you have been here and given us such
It's my
a
pleasure.
good learning. And, I'm sure lots of queries which people have, I got sorted here itself only. It was really very good. It was really very knowledgeable. I also thanks to Samruddha Bharat Fund and Leg Genius for organizing this session for all of us. And I will request all the participants, I'm sure you will have some of the other queries. As I said, that either you can call on the number which is specified 9372886473, or you can WhatsApp on the same. Also, you can email the queries. We will get connected with the Advocate Sujit Salkar through that, and we'll make sure that we are resolving all your queries. Yeah. Thank you very much once again to all of you. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.